I've never censored what I say. I've always put it all out there.
Good for you.
Yeah, I've done that all my life.
But don't you find that it's more not just accepted, but people are more interested in it now because of the internet?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I've heard about you for many, many years, but it's sort of ramped up over the last decade or so.
Right.
Yeah, because of the internet.
Right.
Because people have this.
But I've been around. It's funny when I look at this stuff, like all the stuff about pot and psychedelics, placebos. I was saying this stuff in the 1970s. My first book, The Natural Mind, was published in 1972. It argued that everybody has an innate drive to alter their consciousness.
Yeah.
And that drugs are one way of doing it. I did the first human experiments with pot that were ever done with under double-blind conditions.
What experiments did you do?
I gave marijuana to people in a laboratory in 1968.
And what'd you test them for?
Well, we were just seeing people bet me you couldn't do it. Nobody had ever done this. All this marijuana was becoming such a big thing, and there were no experiments.
Like what kind of experiments?
I took the most basic stuff. I just wanted to show that you could give it to human subjects in a lab and get away with it because people thought you couldn't. You mean
in terms of the FTC?
In terms of law, lawsuits, everything.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to give it to people that never had it before, so there'd be no expectations. Everyone said, this is terrible. They're going to turn into heroin addicts from giving them stuff like that. Anyway, I just wanted to see basic stuff like, does it dilate the pupils of the eyes? Because cops were busting people. They'd say their eyes are dilated.
Yeah.
Must be high on marijuana. And they'd search. But marijuana doesn't, we showed, doesn't dilate the pupils of the eyes. I tested blood sugar because people said the reason people get hungry is because blood sugar drops. Has no effect on blood sugar. We showed that, people who had never had marijuana before in a lab, you could show slight decreases in performance and motor function and cognitive function. But people who were regular users of it, you couldn't show that they had adapted to it.
Yeah, my take on that is that I think the people that are not regular users are freaking out.
Yeah.
And because they're nervous.
It's novel sensations and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and they just don't know how to relax.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big one to me with physical movement because they want to test drivers and all sorts of other things for marijuana. I'm like, this is not alcohol. You're talking about a completely different thing.
If I had a choice of being a passenger with these drivers, I'll tell you which one I would take. A person who had never used marijuana and had just smoked. A person who was a user of marijuana and had just smoked but had never driven high, a person who was a regular user of marijuana and had practiced driving high, and a person with any amount of alcohol in their system. I take the third as the best bet.
Yes, the third's the best bet. Yeah, that guy's a wizard, I bet.
Right.
That guy drives high every day.
Yeah, so he's used to it and not going to show any effect on his performance.
Yeah, the experience is a novel experience, and if you're accustomed to it, then it's just like, here we go, this is my normal world.
And for many people, you have to learn to get high. You have to learn to associate the subtle physical cues with the altered state. That's a common thing. People feel nothing the first time they try it.
Yeah, you do hear that, right? But I don't think they know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, bro, you're high as fuck. Now, when you did these experiments, what did you have to clear these with the FDA?
You would not believe.
What did you have to do?
I had to get permission from the FDA, which said that I couldn't do it unless I first got permission from, it was the old Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which was the Treasury guys. Oh. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics said, we'll give you permission once the FDA gives you permission. So they played that off. Then I had to get permission from the state of Massachusetts, from 2 agencies there. And there were 2 universities involved, Harvard University and Boston University. So coordinating all this stuff was unbelievable. And then once all the approvals came in, I had to get the pot, and there was no legal source of it. So the Federal Bureau of Narcotics gave me confiscated pot that they had confiscated in some case in Texas. They brought it over. They had delayed us so long, I didn't even know if I had time to do the experiments because I was going to graduate. Anyway, they brought this stuff on a Friday afternoon. It was shit. I mean, it was brown, dry. It looked like it'd been sitting in a warehouse for years.
Right.
So the first thing I did was roll up a joint and smoke it. No effect, whatever. I called the agent that I dealt with, and I said, this stuff is no good. And he said, how do you know? You haven't had time to run any experiments. And I said, I looked at it under the microscope, and there was no resin on it. So they grumbled, and they gave me other stuff, which was passable.
So, but again, confiscated stuff.
Yeah.
Because we always used to hear when we were kids about government weed. The government weed was the good weed. Do you
that
remember
was
that?
later. That was later when research got going and the government started a pot farm in Mississippi to provide pot for research, which was much better.
And there was only a handful of people that were under these experiments, correct?
It was so they made it so difficult to conduct research, as they have with psychedelics. No, that's slowly changing now.